This is the last question. Are you in favor of drilling for oil and/or natural gas with platforms erected greater than 10 miles from the coast? Why or why not?
I'm going to say yes to the question, but I think that there's a little bit more detail. You don't need to have platforms to drill for oil. Once you have sunk the initial well, you can have stations that are at sea level that don't actually come up and can route way away from where the actual drill head area is. So you don't need to have those oil well sites that you see the pictures of where you're drilling for oil. I think it's kind of humorous, I guess it's not humorous, it's sad, that we can't drill off our coast, but Cuba is drilling off our coast. Cuba is doing slant drilling down and drilling our oil supplies and pumping them out. You don't have to sit on top of where you drill oil. So the answer to the question is yes, I support exploration for oil and gas off the coast of Virginia. I think that has to be done as a part of a national security issue. We need to get energy independence, and that has to be done in conjunction, as I've said several times, with the development of alternative energy, because we're not going to be able to rely on oil forever. We need to start developing those alternative fuels. We need to be able to move to wind, to solar, and find out other ways to produce our energy and cleaner ways to produce our energy. But until we're at that point, and don't let anybody fool you that we're at that point now and the technology exists that wind or solar can take over a major portion of our energy, it can't. We need to have a transition point. We need to be using our own resources to take and do that.
There are a lot of places where the United States can drill for oil. For example, there are large areas of the Gulf of Mexico that have not been drilled in yet and very easily could be opened up for drilling with very little environmental impact, and in particular, no impact on Navy, Air Force training, NASA space operations. There is one area off the entire U.S. coast where drilling for oil would be a disaster for the combat readiness of military forces and for the ability of NASA to launch rockets into space. That is off the coast of Virginia, the little wedge of territory on the outer continental shelf that the Minerals Management Service has designated for Virginia. The United States Navy and the Department of Defense, since 1983, has consistently said, do not drill in our training area. It doesn't matter if you have the platform there or just a wellhead. The Navy does training with live ordnance, 1,000-pound bombs in that training area. And the underwater concussion from a 1,000-pound bomb, there is not a wellhead in the world designed to withstand that. As recently as this year, 2009, the United States Navy said, we are opposed to drilling in the smack dab middle of our training area. It's critically important. We cannot support it. NASA is opposed to it. They launch rockets to resupply the International Space Station from Wallops. A private company here in Virginia, Orbital Sciences, won a $1.9 billion contract to launch rockets for NASA from Wallops. That investment, those jobs, that income, that tax revenue exceeds by at least an order of magnitude any benefit to Virginia from drilling for oil. Let us put patriotism above the interests of the oil industry, stand by the military, stand by NASA, and oppose drilling off the coast of Virginia.
Thank you, Delegate Bouchard. Thank you, Chris. Dr. Chris Stolle. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, too many closing statements, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was interested in making that closing statement because I just have to respond to that. Let me say this. I'm going to read you a letter. This is from the Office of the Assistant Secretary, Department of the Navy. And although they do oppose the drilling currently, this is what they say. The department is willing to discuss with you possible alternatives that may provide opportunities for exploration and potential joint use of mid-Atlantic consistent with crucial military tests and training activities in this area. Do not let people fool you into thinking that we're going to lose resources of the Navy if we sit down at a table and discuss a way to move forward. Just as Joe said that they sat down and discussed a way to build a windmill farm off the coast, we can sit down with the Navy at their invitation and find ways to explore and take advantage of the resources that are off our coast. Yes, we can explore somewhere else, and the jobs for that can go somewhere else. Exploration for oil and gas off our coast will create 2,500 jobs in this area, and it will bring billions of dollars to this area. It can be done safely. It can be done in conjunction with the Navy at their invitation. So I thought that it was important for us not to end on that statement. We have resources here. We have the opportunity and we have the responsibility to become energy independent, and for us not to tap our resources and send our money overseas to foreign nations that don't like us is the wrong thing to do. One more thing in closing. I think that, again, this comes down to jobs. I'm walking, knocking on a lot of doors, talking to a lot of folks. There are people that are out of work. There are people who aren't listed in the unemployment numbers because they're underemployed. They're working 36 or 32 hours a week rather than the 40 hours that they want to be. We need to focus on what's going to take and create good, paying, long-term jobs here in Virginia. We can do that with education. We can do that with energy independence. Energy, domestic energy equals domestic jobs. And it's not just gas and oil, it's also wind, solar, and nuclear. We have a unique opportunity to take advantage of the nuclear potential for building and energy here. And again, my time is up. I'd love to sit down and talk with you guys some more. Please talk to me afterwards.
Since the offshore drilling topic just won't die, let me point out the letter that Chris quoted is 2 years old. 2009, the Navy wrote to the Minerals Management Service and said, absolutely not. And a couple months ago, the Navy met with the Minerals Management Service and told them absolutely not. There are areas on the periphery of the Navy training range where the Navy can tolerate joint use. That's the alternatives the Navy is talking about. But those areas are up off the coast of Delaware or down off the coast of North Carolina. They're not in Virginia's area. Virginia's area lies smack dab in the middle of the training area. So the reality is much different than what you were just told. The Navy is adamantly opposed to drilling in Virginia's offshore area. We have a lot of alternatives that would not harm the combat readiness of Navy forces and would not harm the space industry in Virginia.